Okay, this will be a conversation with Henry Clements of Shreveport on Friday, March the 13th, 1998.
Clements.
Good morning, sir. This is Donnie Pitchford in Carthage.
Yes, sir.
Spoke to you yesterday.
Yes.
How are you today?
Pretty good.
Well,
I'm just
good.
about to sneeze, so if I sneeze, pardon me.
That's okay. That's okay. Be my guest.
Okay.
Just wanted to get with you, and I hope you don't mind if I record our little interview just so it's a little easier than writing things down.
Well, okay.
That's okay with you. As I told you yesterday, this is sort of a hobby with me. It's also part of the curriculum that I teach, the history of broadcasting. And then, if it's okay with you, I've got a friend in the Birmingham, Alabama area that's collecting the same type of information. His name is Tim Hollis. And if it's no problem with you, I'd like to share some of the information with him about your career.
Local.
And now, I'll be honest, if I remember you, it's vaguely because we lived in Memphis, Tennessee when I was a kid in the 60s.
Right, and it was kind of hard to pick up the KTAL transmitter from Memphis, right?
Just a little bit.
Right.
I'm pretty sure I saw your program a time or two because we had cousins here, and we came to visit in the summers and so on, and I remember, if my memory is correct, you were both Captain Talltower and Papa John. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay. Why don't you just let me know, let's start out and tell me how you got into the profession and a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see. I came directly here from New York City, where I had spent a few weeks making auditions because I was a singer-performer, and that's what I planned to do. And I was there long enough to see what those gypsies did. And being an old homeboy, I decided there are better things in life than fooling around like this. So I came home, sought myself a job. With my liberal arts education, you're not really prepared to do much of anything, but I was a very good announcer and a performer, so I found a job as an announcer at, of all places, Alexandria, Louisiana. And that's about the central part of nowhere, but that's why I started my kid show.
Was that in television?
Yeah.
Approximately what year?
That was 1959.
Oh, I see.
And that's where well, they wanted me to do a kid show, so I picked up one of the characters I had done in Summer Stock the summer before, which was a combination of Eddie Mayhoff and General Powers, I think it was, in Visit to a Small Planet. And that's where I came up with the white wig and the mustache, and they wanted me to be a sailor. So that's when I got my parrot, which was a half-moon parrot. It was not one of those great big old macaw types, and that was my mascot.
I see.
And the children named him, I thought it was a him, named him Jacobi. And I stayed in Ellick until I could get out, which didn't take too long, but I met a young lady there who had also come directly from New York City, incidentally, and she also had decided that at that point she was not certain she wanted to put up with that stuff. So she was teaching dancing in Ellick. She was a native of Algiers in New Orleans, and had been one of the large frogs in the puddle down there in theater.
Yeah.
And we appeared in a junior league show, stopped the show every night, and decided that we had enough in common that we might be interested in more serious things. So we decided that as soon as I made enough money, we would get married. So I moved to El Dorado, Arkansas, City of Gold, to do my kids show.
Now, I hate to interrupt you. What was the station in Alexandria?
KALB.
KALB.
Yeah. Okay. So then I moved to El Dorado, and that was KTVE. That was a
KTVE.
I think that was a drop-in station. It probably wasn't supposed to be there. It was licensed in It was called El Dorado Monroe, which meant that it was in El Dorado, but they had put the transmitter up so that you could get a strong signal in Monroe.
You want to hear something interesting? I don't know if you knew this, but there was a KTVE in Longview, Texas, in the very early 50s that didn't last long.
Anyway, let's see, I tripled my salary. And that's when we got married, and I stayed there until I saw this wonderful new market opening in Shrevesville, which was thoroughly oversold and turned out to be a disappointment from about day 2 when we arrived. They had managed to oversell everybody. They had managed to, well, everybody in the production and the programming department was either a college graduate or was going to college locally for a degree. It was a very high-class operation. And after about 3 weeks, they began to have the going-away party.
Oh, my goodness.
And let's see, there was a period when they would have a going-away party each week, and they would have as many as 3 who would depart. And unfortunately, they either were not replaced or were replaced with off-the-street personnel, so it changed quite rapidly and went down the tube. And I'm not certain it's ever recovered. And then I was Captain Talltower there because they had the tallest tower in the South. And I then moved to KSLA, where it was the same character, but he had on a little different costume, and I named myself there. I was Commodore Clem.
Commodore Clem?
Yep.
That's one I'm not familiar with.
Yep.
Now, remember the name's Captain Talltower, and that was was it KTAL at that time?
KTAL was Channel 6, better known as Channel 6.
I know at one time they were KCMC. So, do you know when they...
KCMC, I think, would have been Texarkana.
Okay. But I guess it's when they opened their Shreveport studio, they became KTAL with the tall tower.
Yeah, up at Vivian, not Vivian. I'm not sure where the tower was.
Do you remember the years on that, on your Captain Talltower stint?
Oh, 1961 to 1965.
Okay.
And then 65 to about 67 or so at KSLA. And that's when I saw that there was no light at the end of the Shrevesville tunnel, and I quit and became an independent writer-producer, which I've done ever since.
Oh, I see. In your hosting job, do you remember, did you have kids on the program? Were you a cartoon host? What did you do along those lines?
Well, we did about 40 minutes live every day and about 2 hours of various films, cartoons, and then when I became, there was a period when sci-fi became strong and they thought we'd make more money with sci-fi films. Then one day we had a brand new set constructed and there was a large clap of thunder and some smoke, and suddenly the young Captain Talltower appeared in his spaceship. We had a first-class operation. We always had a first-class set. We had real set people, and Shreveport had never seen that, has not seen that since. We had a daytime show, which was as good as anybody's daytime show anywhere for feminine interest. It was from something like 12:05 to 1 o'clock each day. But that was all part of the downhill drag, and it all disappeared.
It seems like there just isn't the same level of talent available now in the local markets, and they're just not producing that type of programming locally anymore.
Well, it seems to get worse. You would think it would get better, and once in a while I tune to the local news, which is all I watch locally. And I rarely do that, and I see a new face, and I say, wonder how they got here. But they don't last long. As I was told many years ago when I came to Shreveport, actually before I came, the program director at KTBS was a very frank gentleman, and he says, this is, I've forgotten exact words, but this is a training market. We get them on the way up, and we get them on the way down.
That's the program director?
Yeah.
I think I know him. Marvin Perry?
No, this is before Marvin.
Before Marvin, okay.
Yeah, this gentleman is deceased.
Oh.
I may think of his name.
Yeah, okay. Well, it's not that major an issue, but I see what you mean. When you were in, when you started at Channel 6, that was Captain Talltower. Was that the name of the program itself?
It was Captain Talltower show, yeah.
Okay, and then what did that, was that the one that consisted of cartoons?
Yes.
Okay.
We had a sea captain set, complete with floating clouds in the sky. It was complete. It was just like you were on the deck of a ship.
Is it correct to assume that may have been a Popeye show? Or did you have Popeye in your...
I don't think we ever showed Popeye. I can't recall.
I just wondered with the captain connection if that wasn't the...
I don't remember. We showed Clutch Cargo.
Oh, yeah, okay. Clutch Cargo. What else do you remember from that show?
Lordy, I don't remember.
Okay.
We may have shown Popeye, but it just doesn't...
I know that Channel 12 had Popeye for a time, and then I remember at some point 6 had a program called the Laugh-A-Lot Club.
Yeah, that was an unfortunate occurrence. But the Popeye show preceded me. That was before I came to Shreveport. And there was the famous story of that, and I was always accused of it because I had appeared, and the gentleman who had perpetrated this
maybe I've not heard this one.
Had been fired and was long gone. Let's see, what was his name? Wow, that's been a long time ago. Anyway, perhaps I shouldn't even name him, but...
was that on 12?
That was on 12. And he did the Popeye show, and it was kind of a joke thing. All they did was separate the cartoons. And he had a parrot, which is how the people made the connection, because when I came to town, I had my little half-moon parrot named Jacobi.
Now, was this a live parrot?
This was a live, real parrot.
I see. Not a puppet, okay.
Not a puppet. And he was just separating Popeye cartoons and doing spots and separating the spots with a little pattern. Here's another Popeye cartoon, da-da-da-da. Not really entertainment, no studio guests, just the host.
Right.
And as the crew is always wont to do, they try to break you up and they pick at you, and sometimes it's pleasant and fun, and sometimes it's not pleasant and fun.
Right.
So he was cruising along, and in the studio at KSLA, which was in the Washington Youree Hotel, it was in the Zephyr room where Perry Como had once, I'm not sure how regularly, but he had sung there, because that was down in the basement. And up on the roof, you had the roof garden where Shreveport's elite would go and eat and dine and dance and etc. The studio, well, of course, it wasn't made for studio. It was just a basement.
Right.
And the entrance hall was down the hall about 30 or 40 feet, and the on-air light was atop that door. So unless you were actually looking down there, you wouldn't see the on-air light, which I guess was the cause of the gentleman's problem. So, and then there are audio men who will turn the audio on and turn the audio off, and I happen to know the audio man, whose name was Jim Williams, who is now deceased also. And it was years later when Jim told me that he was the guy on duty when it happened. And he had literally dozed off at the board. So when What's-His-Face had done his routine, he had done his spot, and the guys were still bugging him, and the mic was still on, because The audio man was asleep at the switch, and gosh, I still hadn't thought of the guy's name. He, of course, didn't look down, but he looked over at the monitor, and he saw the Popeye cartoon come back up.
Right.
So he knew he was safely back on the air, and they had been bugging him, and he said something like, leave me alone or I'll have this parrot shit your flat hat.
Good grief.
And he didn't last long after that.
Yeah, I've never heard that story.
Yeah. Anyway, for years, every time somebody would realize who I was, they'd say, was that you? And I'd say, no, Bill Cutterback. That was his name.
Oh, I've heard that name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was a long-time broadcaster long before I came to town.
Is that Cutterback?
Cutterback. I'm not sure exactly how you spell that.
Uh-huh. That name, someone mentioned that name to me just the other day. It may have been Al Bolton.
Yeah.
Because he was at 12 for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great one. And then you moved, okay, you came in as, you said Commodore Clem?
Well, no, I was Commodore Clem in Ellick.
Oh, okay.
And I was Commodore Clem in El Dorado.
Okay.
And when I came to Shrevesville, I was Captain Talltower.
Okay.
Home of the tallest tower in the South for about 1 week until somebody built a tall one.
And then, yeah, I remember I guess you weren't there when they had, now I've been told of the famous 6666, which sounds like a satanic ritual, but the June 6th of 66 date when they supposedly went all color with their local programming, that was at Channel 6.
Well, that doesn't ring a bell.
I think you were gone by that time. I think you, if the dates you told me that in 65 you moved to Channel 12.
Somewhere along there.
But I've also heard the story that Channel 6 used the same equipment for about the next 25 years.
Well, that's probably still there.
They're probably still using it.
Mm-hmm. Well, when I left, I got a going-away party, one of the regular ones, and I got a real genuine leather briefcase, which I still use. Mm-hmm. And along about that time, they decided, I guess, that so many people had left. We had a regular art department and a scene dock where everything was painted. I mean, this was a first-class operation.
Yeah.
It's hard to believe now. And they took there was a large piece of beaver board type stuff. It wasn't really beaver board, but it was a kind of a hard board which was kind of thin, and that's what they used to do everything, put everything on, and hammer and nail and paint.
Right.
And it was covered with that many years of paint, and they cut it all up and gave it away to those people who were departing, and I still have it, and my wife finished it up and put some race cars on it with little lights on it, and it's still hanging upstairs.
And that was part of the set?
No, that was part of the scene dock.
The scene dock, okay.
On which they made the sets.
I understand now, okay. That's interesting. What type of as Captain Talltower, now you were a sea captain, basically, but then you mentioned something that you converted over to doing science fiction. Was that at Channel 6 also?
Yeah, I became the young Captain Talltower.
And then that was basically you transformed your character, I guess, that you were performing.
That's correct.
And would that be when you say sci-fi? Were you running movies?
Science fiction movies. That was during the heyday of all the science fiction movies.
Okay. And then at 12, was that the Papa John era?
That was Papa John.
Okay. So when you left 6, did they recast Captain Talltower, or did they just do away with that?
No, that's when the Laugh-A-Lot Club came along.
That's when that happened. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, I remember a guy by the name of Charles Pierce, is that correct, who did that for a while?
Charles Pierce, yeah. Charlie Pierce was the great movie maker, and he made that thing up on the way to Texarkana.
The Town That Dreaded Sundown?
The Legend of Boggy Creek.
Yeah.
Was that it?
Yeah, he did that one, sure did. And then the Town That Dreaded Sundown. And I believe his name just left me, but he did the weather at Channel 6 for years. Vern Stierman.
Vern Stierman is retired and painting.
Is that right?
He is a painter.
How about that?
Not a house painter, a portrait or whatever he paints. I've never seen.
Yeah, I do some of that. That's another of mine.
I always referred to him, I always had a very high opinion of Mr. Stierman. I referred to him as the old man of the airways.
He had to me, he had one of the most distinguished voices.
Oh, yeah.
Very resonant and very proper.
A delightful gentleman.
I always wondered what in the world he was doing on that station.
Well, I always wondered, too.
But, yeah, I think he narrated those. Well, where is Pierce now? Is he in Hollywood?
Lord only knows. He may be deceased. Who can tell? His reputation was not exactly sterling.
Oh, I see.
As a matter of fact, I think old Vern sued him over those movies. I'm not sure.
My goodness.
I've never heard in the details. That was just a rumor.
I'll never forget the first time I saw one of those and recognized his voice, and then realized who had produced it.
Yeah.
It was quite a surprise. What do you remember about your Papa John show at Channel 12 as far as the format and the material you used in it?
Well, let's see. I've forgotten what kind of... Well, no, I take it back. I do remember. We used a lot of circus shorts, European circus, which was most interesting. And I had a bunch of live children's on every day. We always had a homogeneous group of Cub Scouts, Brownie Scouts, or a church group of some kind. They all had to know each other, because you can't get in a bunch of strays and expect them to do anything. They'll sit there like stones.
Do you remember, did you use any cartoons with that show?
I'm sure I did, but I don't remember what they were.
Okay, all right. Do you remember, you mentioned the incident with the Popeye host that preceded you that you caught the blame for. Do you remember any funny incidents that you'd like to share?
No, I remember that during my entire career, which was about 8 years of kid show entertainment, there was only one occasion that I threw a kid off the show. The only incorrigible I had seen. I got a nasty letter from his father, but nothing ever came of it. He was just incorrigible. He was determined to tear the whole thing up. And I quietly, during a cartoon, invited he and his mother away.
And in those days, you probably had to do most of that yourself. I mean, I'm assuming you didn't have a lot of...
I was the producer, the talent,
I see.
Everything.
I see.
The writer, producer, the planner, contracted with all the children's to come on, and we used to have visiting big-time Hollywood actors come through.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if they still... Well, we don't do any live shows anymore, so they can't come around.
Yeah.
We had the people from Wagon Train. That was a memorable version.
I bet it was.
And I had the star of can't think of the show. It was, well, he was a Western star, and when we had him on the show, he was at that time doing the Western, and he then Hawaii Five-0.
Jack Lord?
He died recently. Yeah, Jack Lord came on. He was rather a jerk.
Oh, really?
But the other guys were fine.
You remember any other celebrities?
No, those are the ones that pop into memory.
There's a gentleman that I'm acquainted with in Birmingham who went under the stage. Well, he still goes by this name, Cousin Cliff. Cliff Holman was his name, and was in the children's television for years, and still is a magician, and still does birthday parties and things of that nature. And he had the top-rated show in that area, and had the opportunity to have just about every visiting celebrity on the show because he appealed to the adults as well as the kids. And,
well, yeah, and he was in a major market.
Yeah, and had, I'm trying to think of Jane Mansfield was on. And brought her young children. And obviously this is before she was decapitated. But he always tells that story because he hosted a Popeye show and had the yachting cap and everything, and said he bent over with his microphone to ask these little darlings some questions, and one of them pulled the cap off and the other one ripped the lining out. demolished it there on live television with him grinning the whole time.
That's why I always had a nice little group of little kiddies, all of whom were well behaved and knew each other.
Did you have I'm assuming you had some time prior to going on live to kind of get them organized?
Oh, yeah, but that didn't take much.
Yeah.
Because when they all know each other and they all watch the show every day, they're just full of anticipation, and if you know how to handle them, that's right. You don't have any problem.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure it was an exciting event for them. And I don't know, I think you might agree that I think we've lost something in our, in the charm and the innocence of today's broadcast.
Yeah, we, during the 40 minutes or so, we always played games. We did mind games. It was very educational without them understanding that they were being educated. And now we have pretty much CRAP.
Did you do any doodling or art or drawing on the show?
No.
Okay. Because I do remember one while visiting in this area, a host who did some...
I think Charlie Pierce did some of that.
That may be who I'm remembering. That may have been in the later years, because I remember, I think he and Bob Griffin, I think had the two last shows of that type, and they were strictly on weekends, and very infrequently, I guess, when they needed some filler. And
when they had sold some spots to a toy outfit or a kitty food outfit, then they'd resurrected.
Right.
That's what that was all about.
Yeah. And I remember we moved here in 1970, and I remember one or two programs of Bob and his buddies, and maybe a half dozen showings of the Laugh-A-Lot Club, probably on a Saturday, and it wouldn't be every Saturday. And Channel 3 still had a Bozo show at that time for a very brief time.
Yeah.
And I talked to Marvin Perry several months ago. He said that was a fellow named Joe Miot.
Yeah, Joe Miot, I called him. M-I-O-T.
What's the spelling?
M-I-O-T.
M-I-O-T. Okay, it's probably
Joe Miot, obviously Joe Miot. Okay. Joe Miot is still in the radio business somewhere here. I'm sure he's still managing a radio station.
You see, I had the spelling wrong, and possibly the pronunciation. Is Miot correct? Or
no, Miot.
That
was my joke pronunciation.
Okay, well, I thought so. But I wanted to be double
like
sure.
The old man of the airways. I had my pet names for him.
Well, I had been trying to locate him because I think he'd be a fun one to interview, because I remember him being very manic and jumping all over the place on that show.
Well, I never watched it, but he had to do whatever Bozo was supposed to do.
Right. Maybe I can locate him with his correct spelling. I think Marvin Perry was the one that told me it was M-Y-A-T-T. I couldn't find anybody. I found some folks by that name, but I couldn't find Joe.
Well, there was another, there's a Miot family that owned the Quaker State refinery.
I see.
That was something like M-Y-A-T-T.
That may be.
But if you will call Keel, there will be someone there probably who'll be able to tell you where Mr. Miot is.
That'd be great. Okay. Any other fun stories or frustrating stories or interesting things you recall? I realize I'm taking up, now about 30 minutes of your time, but you feel free to cut me loose whenever you need to, because I could sit and talk about this sort of thing all day, but I know you've got things to do.
There is one memorable story.
Okay.
It was not memorable at the time, but since I have a photograph of it when it was happening, and it hangs on my wall, I remember it very well. I was, it was during the time I was the old Captain Talltower up at Channel 6. We had the beautiful ship set, and one of our freebie clients was something like Columbia Records. And they would give you record albums in return for promotion, just giving them away on the air.
I see.
And those were my prizes for the various little contests that I would have. And there was this delightful young man who had won an album, and we also had a staff photographer with a great big 4x5 Crown Graphic that took all our press stuff. So he came out as we were presenting, and it was the little kid was standing beside Captain Talltower, and Captain Talltower was standing up, and I've forgotten. I think the little kid was holding the album, and Captain Talltower didn't notice what Jacobi was doing.
Uh-oh.
But Jacobi would run down the microphone wire, which was hanging down, and holding on. And after the show, the little kid came up, and he showed me his ear, and he says, "Captain Talltower, Jacobi bit me." And I said, "Well, that's okay, son. I think there was a little red spot right there." And I didn't know whether he had or not. But in the photograph, just as the photographer snapped it, and I've forgotten what his name was, Jacobi was in the act because his head is blurred. He is going for the ear.
Oh, my goodness.
And he indeed nipped the little kid.
So what became of Jacobi?
Jacobi turned out to be a she.
Oh.
And when Jacobi's feathers began to fall and Jacobi was looking quite ill, we took Jacobi to a local vet. And he determined that Jacobi was a she, and Jacobi was egg-bound. And Jacobi perished in spite of all he could do, and I could still shed a tear.
I see. So Jacobi didn't make the transfer to Channel 12, I take it?
No.
I see.
As I recall, Jacobi was, I think Jacobi expired when, he did, when I was at Channel 6.
I see. Okay. Now, were both of your programs in this area, were they afternoon shows?
Yeah.
Okay. Approximately 4 o'clock, 3 o'clock?
Well, we were the lead-in to the 5:30 news.
Oh, I see. I'm doing some, when I have the chance, I'm doing some looking through newspaper microfilm and trying to get an idea of the broadcast dates and so on programs like that. You mentioned some photos and some things like that. Do you know if, and usually when I ask this question, most people say that nothing exists, which seems to be the trend among stations. They seem to trash their history. Did anything survive in the way of kinescopes or tape of any of your programming?
Yeah, I have some of it. But I'm not going to share it with anybody.
Okay. Well, I can understand that. Is there ever a possibility that some of that will be made available in some way?
I don't know. I'll tell you who could ask about historic stuff, because she is historic. There is one of the original persons still up there, so far as I know, was last time I checked, Jean Bird, B-Y-R-D. She used to live over the back fence from me when I worked up there. And if there's anything existing along that line, Ms. Bird would know where it is.
I see. And she's at 12?
6.
At 6, okay.
She might even talk to you.
Okay. All right. Do you have anything, does that go as far for photos and things like that? Is there anything you would...
No, I just don't want to screw with that.
Okay. Well, that's fine, and I don't want to push anything that you're not comfortable with, but I do appreciate the information. I'm trying to build a file of as many things as I can, as many hosts as I can, as many stories as I can get together, and one reason I ask is that it would sure be a great documentary of sorts if someone were to get together and collect some of this material, just if nothing else for the people who remembered it, the people that grew up.
Well, someone has done that rather recently.
Is that right?
El Bay, the Jungle Network, came up here about 2 years ago.
Oh, I see.
And researched what you were doing, and they put together a thing, statewide thing.
Well, that's great. Did they put you in that? Were you?
Yeah, I was in there.
Oh, great. Yeah, I had talked to somebody about that, and for some crazy reason, I missed that. Normally I try to watch the listings to see what's on, and I wasn't even aware of that one, as interested as I am in this sort of thing, so I missed the boat on that one. But anyway, Well, listen, I really appreciate it, and
You're most welcome.
if I come up with any other questions, I'll give you a buzz, and keep me in mind if you think of anything or have anything to add.
No problem.
And if there's anything I can do for you, please let me know.
Okay.
All right, sir.
Thank you,
Well,
sir.
thank you very much for your time.
Sure.
Goodbye.
Bye.